On the fourth episode of Indopod, I'm talking with Robert Parson, a do-it-yourself autodidact from rural New Mexico, with a passion for off-grid life and on-grid cryptocurrency, about his life journey and why he ended up in Indonesia as an entrepreneur. Robert Parson, my guest today on episode number 4 of Indopod. We are back in Bandung. And tell me something about you. So you are from the United States?
From the United States. I grew up in New Mexico, pretty rural. So grew up on a farm and a ranch in a place called Anton Chico, New Mexico, which very few people have probably ever even been there, but it's like huge 3,000 acre ranch and a couple 100-acre farm. And it's pretty awesome. I really enjoyed growing up out there.
What kind of crops did you grow there?
Mainly like alfalfa, oats, watermelons, and we had about an acre of market garden.
Cool.
So that was a lot of fun growing up. Had an orchard of cherries and fruit trees. It gave me a real deep appreciation for growing your own food and eating real food. I got to do it my whole life growing up, so it was really awesome. And then the larger ranch is all cattle, so running a cattle operation and
did your parents like involve you in the work?
Everything, yeah. I mean, that was pretty much what I did every day since I was little. Like, get up, go, and do your chores, feed the animals.
Yeah.
And we processed all our food, and it was really good. I mean, I think some of the best parts about that I really appreciated the most was a sense of being able to accomplish anything that comes your way. Generalism.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of times in modern society we kind of get very specific. And when the car breaks, we go to the mechanic, or when the roof has a leak, we go to the roofing company, or, if we need food, we go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
And growing up in that kind of isolated environment, you
had to rely on yourself.
You do everything.
Yeah.
Like there's no one to call. So you have to have a lot of self-confidence that no matter what it is that can do for sustaining this whole operation, you need to be able to do it yourself. And we build all of our own houses. We fix all of our own stuff. Even when the animal gets sick, you have to be a veterinarian.
Do you still have any of that hands-on skills left in you?
Those skills?
These hands-on skills?
Well, I just built a house. Before I moved to Indonesia, I built a house in Hawaii.
Wow.
And it's fully off the grid. So I have a little farm there with some gardens and probably like 100 fruit trees. And I built probably 95% of the house myself, which actually probably isn't a good thing. You just hire people to do it. But there was a little bit of a sense of like just a kind of a master project. I built other houses with another company that I built in America called Regenerative Revolution. And we did a bunch of like Earthship and off-grid sustainable homes. We actually did 5 homes in total, but this one was for me. So I kind of wanted to just make it how I wanted it. So
yeah. What do these homes run on?
Well, as far as the good, I mean,
in terms of electricity or water?
Yeah, well, my house in Hawaii is fully off the grid. So I'm 100% out there. Like I catch my own rainwater for water for the house.
Oh, you catch rainwater?
Yeah.
Is that enough?
Well, it depends on where you live and the size of your roof and the size of your catchment system.
Yeah.
It can be enough anywhere in the world. You just have to engineer the system to fit the environmental conditions and the water use of the home. Yeah. So, for example, in New Mexico, I went to a school called Earthship, the Earthship Academy, where
Earthship.
Yeah, Earthship.
Oh, Earthship.
Yeah, and it's really cool. They educate you on building sustainable homes and the latest innovations and really kind of hyper sustainable green architecture, even beyond LEED and other types of certifications for homes. And I went there, worked for them for a while, and then I started my own company building houses in the States. This is a few years back, and I did that for about 3 years.
As in a building contractor?
Yeah, building contractor. So people would want to build a house. They would come to my company. We would design it, which is a big part of it, and then we would actually build it. And the niche, give them the keys and they take it.
Okay, so the niche is like super sustainable.
Yeah, and it was kind of extreme. I mean, these homes are so sustainable that they could, it could be like, for example, I did one house in above Fort Collins, Colorado. And it's actually my current partners in my business, his house. That's how we met. I built his house. It took almost a year. But that house, it's at about 8,000 feet of elevation. And it gets down to below maybe 20 degrees below zero Fahrenheit in the wintertime, feet of snow. And in the summer, it could get up into the 80s or 90s.
Oh, that's a wide spectrum.
Yeah, that's a lot of the high mountain desert has those big fluctuations in summer and winter temperatures. But that house keeps a solid 68 degrees year round without a wood stove and without air conditioning or anything like that. So just how we, this is what you take from Earthship is by orientating the house to take the best advantage of the sun's rays.
Yeah.
By insulating the house in a way where you use insulation and use the mass of the building to store energy. So using actually the mass of the walls and the floor to actually store that heat energy so it could be released later at night. The smart water systems of catching and retaining your own water, and then all of the off-grid energy systems all combined to make a house that can pretty much run autonomously with very little energy inputs. So a small solar array can easily operate the entire house. Yeah. It was really cool. I really enjoyed that a lot. And I took a lot of that into my Hawaii house and integrated all those things. And even for the waste, there's even some pretty amazing innovations in septic solutions. So if you have an off-grid home, you don't want to be polluting your groundwater or your surrounding land. And traditional septic tanks have a lot of problems, and that's the industry standard. And there's a lot of issues with it because you have to either pump them out or you have to, they just leach back out into the earth after a certain level of water overflows on them or input overflows out of them. So there's some new innovations in septic tanks using like worm digesters, other things like this that I did with my Hawaii house. So.
But hyper sustainable housing does not necessarily mean natural components or building material. It is quite high tech, right?
Well, it can be. Everything's on a spectrum, right? So with Earthship, they actually built those houses using mostly old tires.
Tires?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So so you go to the dump and there's like thousands of used tires with the wire sticking out of them that they don't really have a good thing to do with all these tires.
Do they melt them or how does
it work? There's a couple of ways that they would do it at Earthship specifically, but they would, and we did this on a bunch of the houses. The big giant house I did in Colorado, I did with tires. So for the actual foundational walls, the main, load bearing walls we did out of tires. And
with the foundation.
Well, it's like a monolithic structure almost. So sometimes you have to build a foundational grade beam depending on, gets a bit technical, but depending on the frost line in that area, or if you're building here or somewhere else, the foundation has to be a little different, but you can use tires for foundation in some situations. It really depends on the site and the type of soil and the frost line. But with these houses, you take, old tires and you compress them with soil. So you fill them up with soil and you compact the soil in them, and they basically inflate with compacted earth.
Okay.
And then you stack the next one next to it here, and you just, you make the wall, and then you put another one staggering the two below it.
Yeah.
So it makes like a chain link kind of style.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And they become 400-pound bricks that are steel belt, steel enforced bricks. And then you...
true. Tires have like steel cables inside of them.
Yeah, so it's basically compressed earth brick with steel and rubber casings.
Yeah, that's smart.
And then you stagger the walls. So most of the Earthship homes, the way that they also help to stabilize their temperature is they're semi-buried. Mm-hmm. So typically, in the northern hemisphere, the north walls are kind of bermed around. So the earth is bermed against the walls, and all the glass is on the south face.
Yeah.
So the walls are kind of leaning into that berm as to, put a counter pressure from the weight of the earth coming in on the walls. And so like the north wall and the east and west walls would be bermed up with soil to give insulation and, kind of take advantage of that earth battery of temperature stabilization. And all of those walls, north and the east and west, would all be tires kind of stacked up. And then traditional kind of wood framing or trusses across the top and south glass.
So what happened with that business?
It was really fun, man. I really enjoyed building houses. I met a lot of really interesting people and got to do projects all over the place. And
States? In
the States and abroad too. I did some projects in Nepal. I did projects in Mexico, did one in Canada. So it got broad, but the hard part with it is you'd have to travel a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so specific, that type of housing. There's plenty of demand, but it would require me basically never being at home because one project ends and the next one's in, who knows where, and you have to travel there and live in an RV or something while you manage the project. And it's kind of specific building styles, so it's hard just to outsource to other people because it's pretty specific knowledge. So I had a crew of people and we would travel around, but it really put a lot of stress on my marriage at the time because I was gone all the time, like never ever home. And it just became unsustainable for me as a lifestyle of being nomadic all the time.
Well,
tough.
I kind of like, I've been nomadic for quite a while as well. And I can confirm that this is not something you can do forever unless you're a nomadic freak, right? Like some people can do this for their life, but around the age where you start settling or rooting, it just becomes it turns from adventure into burden, it's just not mentally or psychologically sustainable. Yeah. Interesting. So then in Nepal, you had a special venture over there. What happened in Nepal?
Yeah, well, I would really enjoyed the earthship homes and building the earthships, but I felt like they could have gone a little bit further for helping, third world development.
Yeah.
Because, like, for example, Earthship did a project in Malawi, Africa, and so a couple other Africa projects where they were like shipping in tires in a semi trailer truck into the middle of like the African desert to drop off this, trash or materials at a village to build a house for the sustainable project that they raised all this money for. And not to hate on Earthship, because I really love them and they're really great and I learned a lot, but it's like sometimes when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and it just didn't seem like that was a smart way to build projects in developing countries because it's not replicable by the local communities. The amount of concrete, steel, and tires, all these things, they don't even have cars. So, how are you going to truck in tires? It just totally didn't seem like a sustainable solution for these people that really needed help with their housing. So, after the big earthquake in Nepal,
which year was that? 2000.
I'm trying to remember. It was
40.
like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe something like this.
I
actually don't remember off the top of my head the year it was.
I can look it up later.
I've been to Nepal a couple times. I just went on like personal trips. I worked with a couple orphanages just on private traveling and stuff like that. And I really had a soft spot for Nepal. And after I found out about the earthquake and all of the destruction, a couple of my other friends have also just kind of naturally been in Nepal too. So we grouped together and did a project called the Nepal Earth Bag Project, where we went out there and we did a Kickstarter to raise some funds to go out there and
did you hit the goal?
We did hit our goal. Yeah. Cool. And we're able to raise enough money to cover the travel, to cover all the materials that we needed, and to build a house for a local person there and do educational workshops on this new innovative building technique that we were bringing to Nepal.
And what was that?
This one was another step further in advancement. I mean, I went really down the rabbit hole of sustainable building and different types of building techniques. I literally studied every type of alternative building style that you could, because I was just really passionate about it at the time. And I was looking to help people and help myself and just learn as much as I could. And I found it really fun to learn about all that. There's so many different styles of building, but this particular one that was appropriate for that setting in Nepal was earth bag building. And basically you take rice sacks, it's like the best way to, in sustainable situations, like in Nepal where resources are limited and you can't just go down to your local hardware store. It's best to think about what materials are available to the local people. And then let's make those materials that are local to them fit within our design, versus like what we saw Earthship doing, which is taking materials that don't fit in the local culture or availability and forcing it. So it's like, let's actually try to solve a problem the best that we can. So this particular style of building is extremely strong, earthquake resistant, should last hundreds of years with minimal maintenance.
Does it have a certain geometry?
Yeah, I mean, basically it's using the architectural designs of domes and arches and vaults. And the reason is because you could build an overhead structure with making it a monolithic structure.
Yeah.
So you're not having to use wood or steel. You could just take the same material that you make the wall and also make the ceiling. And if you look in like Iran and Iraq and other places throughout the Middle East, some of the oldest buildings that are still standing are actually domes and vaults. So and they're built in this same exact style, actually. It's really old building technique, but we just kind of modernized it.
So humans sort of figured that out a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, humans actually figured out a lot of interesting things a long time ago. But with the advent of fossil fuels and cheap energy, we don't have to I'll just ship something in. I don't have to use what's there. So we kind of forget about some really old and ancient technologies that were really smart and good. But because of fossil fuels, it makes it so cheap and easy just to do kind of whatever we want and not have to follow what the natural environment gives us. So it was earth. So basically the way the technique works is we would build domes and we would take native soil we would do the testing on the soil as well beforehand. So we'd make test bricks and give them particular PSI testings to make sure that it's going to be adequate. And we'd have to maybe amend the local soil if it didn't meet our testing ahead of time.
But mixing it with like cement?
Well, if it's the ideal site, it's going to have the right mixture of clay and sand.
You still burn it though? Is it still with heat?
What was that?
With heat? Do you burn it?
No, you don't have to.
Oh, you don't have to. Okay.
You don't have to burn it, but basically if it's the right mixture of clay and sand, it forms basically adobe and can be used to make the whole entire house without doing anything except adding water.
Okay.
And, and compressing it with a little bit of water, like 10% moisture content, and you can compress it into adobe bricks that you can make the whole entire house with. But if the site doesn't have ideal soil, you might have to amend it with sand. Or if it's in a part of the building where it might be in contact with water, like that first couple feet from the ground level, we might stabilize that soil using lime or cement. But hydrated lime is a great solution. That's a lot less. It's actually easier to access in those places and does just as good of a job as cement would do, if not maybe better, depending on the different soil makeups. So it's like you just do a little bit of stabilizer where water would touch the foundational walls. And then above that, you wouldn't have to do any type of stabilization if the soil passed all the tests that you needed to do. But the cool thing is you could build an entire house, show up on a site, have your design ready. You have rice sacks, some barbed wire. We use that as like a mechanical mortar or like a Velcro to hold each progressive layer together.
Okay.
It kind of ties into the nylon to hold it temporarily in place.
Were you able to source that locally?
Yeah, easy. That was easy.
That's easy. For some reason, barbed wires you can get anywhere in the world, right?
yeah. It helps, for animals and controlling where they go.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So it's pretty ubiquitous. But so rice sacks, soil, and barbed wire, and you could build a massive, beautiful home that can last for a really long time. And you don't need a lot of wood or other materials. You can pretty much just do the whole thing with that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And low cost, strong, earthquake resistant. And so we did the project. We built the domes. We educated the local population, but we pretty quickly, to be honest, we kind of learned a little bit from that about the dome shape was hard for the local people they didn't want to live inside of a dome because they consider that to be a temple.
Oh, yeah.
In Buddhist culture and in Hindu culture, they still have some domes represented, especially like right there in Nepal. Some of the main spots that you would go to like look at the temples are these big domes, and they draw, the eyes on them. Really cool places, but they're like, we don't want to live inside of a dome because it's like, that's like something, it's for a temple. That's not for a house. So
did they tell you that afterwards, or was that like
it's kind of discovered right when we landed.
I mean, it is a bit of an irony, right? When you think about it, you put all that energy, money, blood and sweat into it. And then in the end, they say, hold on, this is preserved for a very specific religious purpose.
Yeah.
You can't do this here.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, this is the things that you think you have a solution for something, and you want to come in and help people, and you have this like, fuzzy feeling that you want to do good.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, you can't think about all the things that can happen without being like culturally close, there. And so it was a good lesson in humility and thoughtfulness about, if you're going to try to come into a culture, really respect that culture, listen to the people. Don't just have this great idea in your head. You have to go a little bit further. But this happens a lot especially with donation-based things like this. It's like, I see a lot of these things happening. Maybe a lot of people would never say anything, but just to be forthright, I felt like it was not the right application at the end of everything that we did. And we're wiser for it now, but it was still had a great time, helped some people. There are some people living in the home, but it's the real goal. If our goal was to go there and build a house for a family, we did. But if the goal was to, create a viral idea that can permeate the culture and help a lot of people, I don't think it succeeded with that particular design.
Yeah.
As far as the loftier goal that we had in mind. But at the same time, we built some great connections, and I feel like a lot of the local builders I met with, they took something from that they might have been able to integrate into their other designs.
Yeah. So the essence of the story is do good, but keep your eyes open.
Yeah. Keep your eyes open and your ears open. And but it was a great experience overall. And I'm just wiser for everything that I experienced there and helped with. And
I mean, it's absolutely noble what you did there, right? I mean, experiencing the tragedy of a earthquake, and we do have earthquakes here in Indonesia. I mean, even though they're tiny in comparison, they are scary nevertheless, right? I mean, I run out of the house every time it happens here. I grab my daughter, I grab everything, my laptop, and then I'm out of the house.
Yeah.
So, but then after that, what happened then? After Nepal, you went straight to Indonesia, back to the US?
After Nepal, that's when I ended up going to Hawaii.
Oh no, okay. Oh, and then you built
and then I built
house.
that house in Hawaii for myself.
Yeah, and it's still there. Do you rent it out?
Yeah, I have a renter in there now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and
so that person must be super happy because the electricity bill is like
zero. They have no bills. And they have their food produced for like a good amount of food.
Oh wow!
So I mean, that was kind of.
Do you put that on top of the rent, like a little bit of extra charge?
What happened was like when I first rented it out, I had renters at full price, and then the pandemic hit, and the renters had to leave the island, so my place was vacant.
Oh.
So I had one of my friends there, and I was like, man, it's hard to manage from abroad, and I couldn't even go home if I wanted because of COVID. So I put one of my friends in there. So it's, one of my really good friends is staying in the place, taking care of it and paying a rent, but not full price.
Yeah.
Which I think is okay. I mean, even in the States, there's all kinds of rent forgiveness for people right now and not making people pay their rent. So I'm happy to be getting anything for my place, but I'm more so happy that it's in the jungle. I mean, it's a serious jungle where my house is at. So
there's jungle in Hawaii.
Yeah.
I always thought it's just volcanoes and that's it.
No, I mean, Big Island, Hawaii is like serious.
So what is it? I've never been there. There's Big Island and then there's a bunch of other islands, or?
Yeah. There's multiple islands. I think there's 8, maybe more. Sorry if I get that wrong.
That are inhabited.
That are habited. There's Big Island, Kauai, Molokai. There's a bunch of islands, Honolulu, Maui. So several islands that are there. And Big Island is the one with the volcano on it.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it's kind of a weird place. Like, it's really weird. I really like it. If you turn the United States sideways and shook it, and all the wild ones, like they were trying to get out of America, they all kind of landed at the last furthest west place they could go, and then up in Hawaii. So you get all kinds of characters out there. And
there's a bit of a drug problem over there as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you're at. I mean, seems like there's a drug problem in a lot of places.
Oh yeah.
But and there's some really interesting stuff around that too. Like when you have native peoples that have been displaced by
of course,
like Native Americans in the United States or in Hawaii, that the native Hawaiians have been, displaced and kind of pushed around quite a bit, and they feel
they're connected to Asian
it's a Polynesian descent.
Polynesian. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the story of the Hawaiian people is tragic. You know, the United States basically came in and stole their civilization from them in a lot of ways. I mean, they literally imprisoned their queen. There's a whole backstory behind what the U.S. did in Hawaii that makes a lot of Hawaiian people want to they're just not happy about it, understandably. And there's this their push for Hawaiian people to, you know, kind of take their island back, their nation back, which is, you know, hard to do against the American government. So a lot of displacement. But overall, I mean, there's some drug problem like any place, but I didn't personally find it to be completely overwhelming on the Big Island for me. I mean, there's definitely issues, but mostly economic. You know, there's not a lot going on out there.
Well, that's the thing. You're like how far away from mainland?
Over 2,000 miles from any. It's the most isolated place in the world.
Oh wow! Okay.
And you're on an active volcano, so it's like it's a little bit of it's an interesting place to live. But you know, I got a really good deal on my land when I purchased my land there, and I really wanted.
Are you facing sunset or the beach or the sea or anything?
My place is a little bit higher in the mountains, so you could think almost like high mountain rainforest with like pine trees and a little misty, and kind of a lot of rain, quite a bit of rain. And I'm about 30 minutes to nice black sand beaches and you know, surfing, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, it's black sand over there. Oh yeah, of course, volcano.
Yeah, it's pretty much all black sand. There's some white sand areas, but mostly black sand. Yeah.
Oh, fascinating. And have you seen lava in live action or like spitting?
When
stuff?
It was insane. When I lived in Hawaii, you know, when I was there building my house, was right during the massive eruption they had like 2 years ago that took out like almost 1,000 houses. And
1,000?
Yeah, it was serious. Like, it was really wild. I mean, I was just in my house one day building. I was cutting some boards and the house just starts shaking like crazy. And I think it was a 7.1 or something like this earthquake.
Yeah.
And I run outside and I look up at my house, and my house is just like literally like a wet noodle flying back and forth. And I look, all the trees are, you know, doing the same wet noodle thing. And then I look to my left and there's this like wave where like the soil looked like water. And it was like a wave that was just running across the soil, and the trees are rising, and I could just see it coming towards me. And so much so that I lifted my left foot up about 1.5 feet, and then my right foot up about 1.5 feet as the wave went underneath me. And then that's kicked off this massive, I think almost 80-day event where the volcano
80 days.
80 days where the volcano erupted. And it would be just like if you went out in front of your nice subdivision house that you have here, and the street opens up and lava shoots right out of the middle, you know,
Hollywood style,
straight up.
Wow.
And that small fissure turned into about a mile-long fissure with something like 10 plus vents, mini volcanoes all along the fissure.
So the island literally cracks open like an egg.
Yeah, cracked open like an egg. And then anyone that was below that fissure downhill, the lava just flew and took out everything.
So you actually do not want to live too close to the beach.
No, the beach is like in this particular part of the island.
Yeah.
Because but this is called Puna. It's anything below the rift line. This has happened multiple times. So anyone that bought land below the rift zone, you're kind of expecting it. You have. Every 30 years, you have to expect that I might lose absolutely everything.
Yeah. And you probably do not get any insurance.
No insurance. No. But it's kind of sad because people forget that it happens. This place is beautiful. There's dolphins. There's mango tree that's 20 feet tall.
And there's a volcano behind you.
But the volcano hasn't gone off in 30 years. I'm fine. And this place is so cheap. How is the land so cheap when I have access directly to this most beautiful beach in the world in Hot Springs?
Yeah.
And it's good while it lasts, but then when the thing erupts, you're like, shit.
Hell on earth, literally. Yeah.
So and then it was just, and like as the lava hit the groundwater through underground tunnels.
Oh, it creates steam.
And you'd have these massive explosions where it sounded like a war zone. Like I'd be sleeping in my place, and I'm above the rift zone, so I was safe from the direct lava danger. But I would hear just like kaboom, kaboom, like massive explosions, and
Wow.
you can see boulders the size of cars flying hundreds of feet in the air just out of nowhere and landing on. It was completely insane. The gas, I had to get gas masks, like full blown Israeli bio-nuclear gas masks that luckily I was able to get a hold of, and because the nauseous gases coming out of the vents literally could kill you in about 5 minutes if the wind shifted and it had a big vent and you couldn't get out and you don't have respiratory protection, it'll burn the inside of your lungs.
So does every Hawaiian own a gas mask?
They should.
They should. Okay, at least.
I mean, I have 2 of them at my place in Hawaii. I left them for my renter with extra canisters in case that happens. But
wait, is it like active gas? Like, does it have like a oxygen tank with it, or is it just a filter?
It just screws on to the bottom of your full sealed nose and mouth, and seals on the front of it, and it only lasts like 8 hours, and you have to get a new canister and put it back on again. But literally, it would also work if there was like a nuclear fallout or something. They're pretty serious.
Well, that's the other thing now, because Hawaii is now in the range of certain interballistic missiles, I guess.
Well, we did have that warning. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, it was. What happened there?
Yeah, I don't know. I was on the way to like a farming course.
Oh, you were there.
I was there when it happened. It was a crazy year. This is the same year that the eruption happened, I believe, too.
The crazy year.
Yeah, I was driving to this like permaculture course that I was taking on, growing trees, sustainable trees, preserving native species. And I was driving to this thing, and the radio comes on. It's like, and I look at my cell phone, and it says something like nuclear inbound missiles inbound to Hawaii. This is not a test. Get covered now. This is an official warning.
What did you feel?
To be 100% honest, I didn't really feel anything.
Okay.
I don't know what that says about me, but I was just in my car and I'm like, well, if it really is a nuclear bomb, there's probably nothing I can do that's going to save me right now. I'm just going to continue on with my day.
Yeah.
I'm not going to live my last moments in fear. And I'd really, there's nothing, I'm driving on a highway. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? I'm not prepared. There's nothing I could do. And I just continued driving. And I said,
so there was not even a bit of panic?
Honestly, no.
Nothing.
Zero.
Because you just refuse to
but
be
I
afraid.
personally felt that this can't be real.
Okay.
I'm like, it's probably not true.
Yeah.
This is probably some weird, and it ended up not being real. But for whatever reason, I had no feeling of panic or anything. I don't know why, but I just didn't. I just continued with my day. I landed at the class that I was taking, and everyone's freaking out. What's going on? I'm like, well, we're not dead yet. I think we're all okay.
Come on, there's still a lesson to do here.
yeah. And it was a beautiful day. I mean, Hamakua Coast in Hawaii is just some of the most beautiful land you've ever seen in your life. Just driving on the mountainside, looking at the ocean, and everything's beautiful and green, and waterfalls on your left and the ocean on your right. And it's just a great day. I don't know.
And how long did it take until they realized it was basically a false alarm?
I think they sent out another text maybe like 2 or 3 hours later. I think there's quite a big delay between when the first, but there was a lot of horror stories of people like putting their kids in manhole covers
really?
In Honolulu downtown, and lots of crazy stuff. But my ex-wife at the time called me, and she's like, what happened? I'm like, I really don't know. There's nothing we could do. I love you,
And that was basically, they were trying to do a test, but instead of a test, it turned into a real thing because some operator pushed the wrong button, or what happened there?
I have no idea. And I don't think anyone really knows what really happened.
Human error.
Try if you follow the official story, it's something like that, but there's a lot of holes in that story. I don't totally ascribe to it. I just have no idea. Who knows?
Well, I guess there's a certain level of classification to it because you can't just like put it all on the open.
I don't think there's a button that you just put.
Yeah. I guess
they painted as there's like this red button in some control room that you press and it sends out this message, but like
some cat walked over a keyboard.
The freaky thing at the time, there was all this kind of like war rattles going on between North Korea, where they're, talking about how they were, testing missiles, and North Korea was a big thing in the news right at that same time that happened. And Hawaii is the closest place to North Korea for that. So who knows? But now at least I have a nuclear gas mask, and I learned what to do if that ever happens again, because I educated myself on what to do. And if you go into your house and you shut all the doors and windows and tape all the vents, and you do 14 days of isolation, it's okay to basically come out of your house somewhat after 14 days. So if there was a nuclear bomb that landed somewhere on the island that didn't immediately take you out, you're supposed to basically isolate yourself within your home for 14 days and have enough.
Which we're all used to right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then my house is off the grid, so I'm okay.
But then what happens with the, is that because radioactivity just snows down or washes away or whatever?
Yeah, I guess it, I don't know exactly, but something like this. I believe that the radioactive isotopes lose some of their strength after a certain amount of days, and it's somewhat safe to travel outside of your home. But, I just, kind of follow what I read, and, and I had a little stockpile of food and stuff. But in Hawaii, everyone's houses are so open because it's a tropical environment that it'd be pretty tall order anyways. Like, you'd be in trouble.
How many, what's the population of Hawaii?
I don't really know. I think it's somewhere around maybe 3. And Big Island specifically, I'd have to think maybe something like 100,000. It's not that many.
Oh, okay.
Maybe more. I'm probably completely off with that number because I don't 100% know. But where I live, it's very rural. Like, I pretty much know everybody. I know all my neighbors. Like,
is tourism a factor? Are a lot of mainlanders coming over for holidays?
That's the main business.
Oh, that's the main business, actually.
But, because of COVID, that got shut down too. But
so Hawaii's been hit hard,
Yeah, hit hard, but also a lot of the people in Hawaii are, there's a good culture of growing your own food and taking care of yourself too. So I think a lot of my friends were, they were ready for this a long time ago. Like they all have little gardens and farms, and there's a good young person culture of growing your own food there. So as far as, just having your basic needs covered, I think people are pretty well taken care of. Literally in Hawaii, you could drive. I remember the first time I visited Hawaii, one of the things that made me want to live there is I was, driving through, and it was mango season. And I was driving down to these hot springs right on the ocean in my rental car, just exploring the island. And I drive down this road called Pohiki Road, and there was huge mango trees lining this road for probably 3 miles. Wow. And it was mango season, so just mangoes all over the road, just falling on the ground.
Yeah.
And I got out of the car and picked up one of the fresh mangoes and ate it. It's like the most delicious mango I've ever had in my life. And there's so many.
Sweet and juicy.
Everyone couldn't even pick them up to eat. They're just rotting on the ground. And it's like, and there's like coconuts everywhere and guava and lilikoi. And I'm like, this place is nice. You literally just drive down the road and go grocery shopping off the side of the road. So it's like, at least for food, they're pretty well taken care of.
I have a mango tree down here.
Nice.
This one here.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's cool. And then basically you now live on the Hawaii of Indonesia, in a sense. Big volcanoes, islands.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Hawaii a lot, but at a certain point, I felt like it was a little too soon. It felt like
to settle down or what?
Yeah, I mean, it's something you want to do with, like, you settle down with your wife and kids and have your little farm and take it super slow. And I think I accelerated that a little too quick because I got bored. And I have kind of like a entrepreneurial mind. I love learning new things. And I felt in Hawaii, a lot of the people that ended up gravitating there were not of that same mindset. They were more, they like learning new things, but they weren't that business savvy.
Yeah.
A lot of people were into technology. Like, I love coding and learning about, advanced computer science concepts and implementing them in my life.
But did you study it, or what happened?
No, I just studied all that on my own. I'm like always studying pretty much everything. Yeah. Self-studying pretty much everything.
And do you think is that because of your upbringing, like because you had to be so autonomous, you had to rely on yourself and your own abilities to absorb skills and knowledge? Is that what kind of like made you avoid institutions, or did you go to university somewhere?
I went to like 2 years of university, but I left pretty quickly. It just wasn't really fitting with me.
Too unpractical or too theoretical, or?
I mean, honestly, at that time in my life, I just wanted to make money.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Because I grew up, without a ton of cash, and my mom was after I left the farm with my mom, she's a single mom, teacher. Didn't have a lot of money, but enough to get by. And right when I was, 18, 19 years old, going to college, I was like, I just want to make a lot of money. That's all I really was concerned about. And I found that to make a lot of money, I didn't have to go through all these years of school. I can actually make a lot of money right now today. And I started actually working in sales. I started my own health and life insurance brokerage company when I was 19 in Colorado. And I was selling like life and health insurance, I think, for something like 8 years.
Telephone or how?
No, like physically working with businesses, mostly small to medium-sized businesses, and setting up insurance for all of their employees, and traveling to the business, talking with all the employees, getting everyone signed up, and kind of managing their insurance and life insurance and health insurance accounts. And I did that for a bunch of years. I learned a lot about, sales and communication through that process, and I made a ton of money. And at that time, that's all that mattered to me. So that's what I did. And I was able to make more money in my first year at 20 years old doing that than I would have made after, 10 years of being a physical therapist, which I was actually planning to go to school for. So at that time, it seemed like a no-brainer decision for me to do. And yeah.
But then you reached the point where you thought, okay, there's more to sales. Yeah.
Well, more to life than just making money, basically. Yeah. Like after, all those years of doing that, I was making decent amount of money. I was really happy, had everything I could want, started buying stupid things like motorcycles and race cars. And
that's what you do in your 20s. You buy a fast motorbike.
I wish I would have saved my money and invested it back then.
And bought more Bitcoin.
Bought more Bitcoin, bought more stock, done anything with it. But no one around me actually educated me to like save. I didn't really have anyone around me and in hindsight, I really wish someone would have like smacked me in the head and be like, dude, just take 10% of this and put it away. But whatever. A lesson learned. And
I mean, that was 10, 20 years ago, right? Now you still have a lot more years ahead of you. So you could start now and you'll be in a nice spot in 10, 20 years.
True. Time is like the ultimate currency though.
Yeah.
It really, really is.
Yeah. However, time equals money. This is kind of a Western culture or like a Western concept, I think. More, or at least more so in the West than in the East. From my experience here is that people here see time more as a circle rather than a linear progressive thing, that it becomes more expensive as the longer it kind of goes on unused or not really monetized in a sense. So opportunity cost, for example, is something that doesn't exist over here.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I thought I heard this really interesting kind of concept the other day. Like Warren Buffett, I think he's maybe in his 80s or something. I don't know how old he is.
In the 80s. Yeah.
Would you trade your life for Warren Buffett's to have all of his money but be his age, or keep your age that you have now without his money?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either.
No, that's...
Yeah, because it's that opportunity cost.
I would just take the money.
Was that?
I would just take the money, not the age.
But you can't.
Right? Yeah, but I can't. Yeah, that's the catch, right?
Yeah, that's the
and there's no way to buy yourself like an extra 30 years, right?
Yeah.
So, not yet.
Yeah, not yet. So it's like, time really is the ultimate kind of currency. And
because what happened to me here is we wanted to rent an office, and I think that was like 6 or 7 years ago. And we found this really, really cool place in downtown. And the landlady would give us a price. And the price was very steep, but maybe just okay, considering certain factors. And we tried to negotiate a little bit down, but she wouldn't budge. She wouldn't go down even a single million. It was just a little bit annoying. And then we ended up finding a different office. And then a year later, or I think 1.5 years later, someone told me that that particular place was still available for more. So she increased the price, and she didn't find any tenant in the time. So rather than like making any concessions to the price, they'd rather just keep it empty. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't really a place where not having a tenant would also be a good thing for, I don't know, the quality of the property. No, it was not that kind of, like a shiny high-rise apartment where you ideally do not want to have any tenants, right? This one was like a building from the 50s.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't rent it out if she wouldn't get her price, or the price she was asking for. And this is not an isolated story. It happens here all the time. So a lot of property that you see out here in downtown here in Bandung, not but generally in Indonesia and Bali as well, they stay vacant for a long time until someone is willing to pay what they're asking for. So it's very different. In America, you haggle a lot more around these things, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like what I've experienced. And then what happened after Hawaii? So what brought you to the Eastern Hemisphere?
Yeah, I was just sitting in my little off-grid house with my LED lights, and I'm like, and it's raining, and I'm like, I'm kind of bored here. Like, I'm ready to, and also I got divorced at the same time, so that was a big part of the decision.
Yeah.
So I was kind of setting myself up for this little off-grid farmer lifestyle with my, make some babies and live off the land and the whole thing. Because that's what I grew up with. So it's kind of like going back to my childhood a little bit.
Yeah. Do you think you will eventually go back to that?
Definitely.
Definitely. Yeah. But it's just not the time. The time's not ripe yet.
Yeah, not right now. Yeah. So I work with this company Livo2. That's what I've been doing now for the past several years. Which is an oxygen therapy company. We manufacture devices to help people oxygenate their bodies. And I work in sales with them, and I work remotely in Hawaii. So I was working from the computer in Hawaii doing that. And it's a smaller company. We're about 10 years old. I'm basically like number 2 at the company. And we're trying to expand and grow. And I was selling a lot of equipment in Asia, but I never traveled here, and they weren't really getting that great of attention or services because no one's here to train them and educate them on how to use it and generate more energy in this part of the world around it. So I said, I'm just bored here. I'd like to attempt to do a nomadic traveler worker lifestyle, and why not? Let's just do it. I watched the YouTube videos of all these people. I'm in this country today and I'm in this country tomorrow and I'm working, and I'm like, I'm already in Hawaii. It's not too much of a bigger jump for me just to go and actually do that lifestyle where I could travel a bit more, and I'm a little bit free now. So I said, I'm just going to go to all of the countries, the cities that people bought my equipment, and give them a free training as just a thank you. And it's kind of like a write-off for work expenses. I'm just going to travel for work and help people with the product and stir some business up and do some business traveling / vacation. So I went to Hong Kong, Philippines, Thailand, did free trainings for people, public trainings, educated a bunch of people, stirred up a bunch of energy around the product. And I went to Bali because some friends of mine lived in Bali and loved it. I was like, this place is cool. I really like Bali a lot. And right off the bat, I'm meeting all of these interesting young people who are doing different entrepreneurial ventures in Indonesia, in Bali. So I made more friends, had more mental stimulation with other human beings in a couple months of being in Bali than I had in 2 years of being in Hawaii. So I was like, okay, this place is a lot of energy through here. I enjoy this. So I decided to stick around for a while.
Cool. And then in Bali, you are now more or less anchored in.
Well, I'm here in Bandung right now.
Okay, right now you're in Bandung. All right. But that's a business trip, is it?
Yeah. So there's I plan to stick around in Bali for a while. I at this point I like it. We'll see when the tourists come back, and
it will change a lot.
Because I was there right when the tourists, right before Corona, and then it cut off, and it's so nice.
You saw a little bit of the buzz.
I was there at the peak right before everything kind of hit, and it was pretty wild. It was really annoying with all the traffic and just constant tourism. It's like being at Disneyland every single day.
It is a sort of Disneyland now these days.
Yeah. So we'll see if I stick around there, if it gets too busy for me, or I move to a different part of the island. It's like maybe Uluwatu or something different. But
the northern part of Bali has black sand beaches as well.
Yeah.
Have you been to the volcano? I don't know if it's open right now.
I
It was an
haven't hiked
exclusion
it.
zone
I
around
went to Kintamani,
Oh, okay.
which is one of the volcanoes and
Yeah.
like hot springs and the lake and all that.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. The Balinese people, I really appreciate them a lot.
Yeah.
I've just had nothing but positive experiences with all the Balinese that I've met,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm starting to learn, the language more and more, practicing
Indonesian or Balinese? Okay.
Indonesian, yeah, not Balinese yet, but so I feel like the more that I could speak Indonesian, the better I'm going to probably be able to communicate with the local people, and not just have to be around Westerners all the time too. That would be a little bit nice to kind of learn a different perspective
Yeah.
from another culture.
Yeah. I mean, the Indonesian culture or the Balinese culture in particular is in itself very different from the rest or the other islands because it's a Hindu
Yeah.
island, and I mean that's not news, but every time I go to Bali, I really enjoy this fresh sort of different vibe, But then at some point, I also have to come back here, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm grounded here in Bandung, and I love it here. But then going back to your business, O2 Boost O2 it is, right?
Yeah, so Boost O2 is the name of the branch that I did in Indonesia.
Oh, that's the branch. Okay.
But the actual company that I'm a part owner in and the manufacturing is called Live O2 in America. So I know that gets a little weird, but we changed the name a little bit for being here.
Why would you gas someone up if to say it in a funny way?
I mean, basically the way it works is you have somebody wear a mask that's attached to a pure oxygen supply, and they exercise for about 15 to 20 minutes.
What kind of exercise?
Doesn't matter. We just want to get the heart rate and respiration
okay.
up. So it could be any type.
What kind of heart rate is it?
It depends, but a simple way to understand it is on a scale from 1 to 10. 10 is as hard as you can possibly go.
Oh, okay.
Just like a 6.
A 6, okay.
Yeah.
Like
For
jogging.
15 minutes.
Like jogging. So.
The mild jogging, yeah. And we just want to increase the blood flow, increase the respiration rate. And so why would you do this to anybody? I mean, oxygen is the most important thing to our health.
Yeah.
It's the most important thing keeping us alive, this element. And over time, the oxygen level that we're delivering to our cells falls for everybody.
Yeah.
We hit a peak around age 22, and then every year it's just this slow down into the right graph.
Why is that?
Cells, over time, it's the aging process. Our telomeres get shorter, so cells start turning off, and then we get aging. We get wrinkles, we get gray hair. Internal organs, stop working as optimally. Different types of health conditions start to come into the fray when we get older. As we get older, health conditions start coming in higher.
Yeah.
So, it's a combination of many, many things. But we think since oxygen is at the peak, if we can make sure that your oxygen level stays optimal, regardless of your actual age, we can mitigate a lot of the aging process and help conditions that people might have developed before they found our product too. And there's been over 30 years of research on this. Hyperbaric oxygen chambers have also been around for quite a long time, almost 200 years if you look all the way back through the history of it. And there's tons of documentation of how putting more oxygen in somebody's body increases their overall cellular energy and their vitality.
Yeah.
I mean, the main problem with hyperbarics is that with hyperbaric chambers, the cost per session to get an oxygen therapy treatment and all of the documented benefits is around $250 per visit. And for it to be an actual make a change in a person dealing with a condition, they need maybe 60 or 70 visits. So it's a lot of money, and most people just can't afford it, and most insurances don't cover it.
Yeah.
And it's only usually in specialty facilities. So what Live O2 does is we've created basically a competitor to hyperbaric chambers that is just as effective, but a lot less expensive. And we can actually ship it to your home, and you could do it on your own in the privacy of your house with, one-on-one video calls, things like this. Or, we have now probably 700 doctors or different clinics in the US that have our equipment as well, and all over the world. So we're kind of expanding the market of oxygen therapies beyond what historically has been thought of as being the only option.
Yeah. And you produce your oxygen yourself, or how does it work?
Definitely. I've been using it now. I use it like 3 days a week.
So you are, of course, if you're your own customer, then it's a good sign.
Getting high on my own supply.
Okay. How does it feel? Explain. Like what?
You just
what is
feel
the
like you
effect?
have more energy and
Okay.
and a lot more mental clarity.
So I mean, I drink a can of coffee in the morning.
It'd be like it's like a can of coffee.
Okay.
But
Without the negative side
without
effects.
the negative side effects, and there's a lot more mental. Your cognition improves quite a bit. Like there's been a bunch of studies we can even do. We've done some studies even recently too. Your reaction time improves by about 15%.
Oh wow!
Immediately. Yeah, immediately following the sessions, your reaction time is improved. Your ability to process incoming information in bits per second is increased. Sensory memory is increased. So you're just more sharp. Your mind's sharper when you're after immediately following it. And
so can I buy such a unit?
Yeah, you could buy it. We could ship it to your house, and we're really good at training people remotely.
And the unit is producing its own oxygen, yeah?
Yeah, it just takes in room air, puts it through a molecular sieve, and generates pure oxygen air. And the system also produces a low oxygen air at the same time too. It gets a bit technical, but it's also an altitude simulation machine, so it can simulate about 10,000 feet of elevation.
So you get the benefits of both. So you oxygenate, and then you kind of like put yourself on a mountain, so to speak.
Kind of like that. Yeah, I mean, this is actually some really old wisdom, but pranayama breathing, there's Boteko breathing. There's a lot of understanding about the breath.
Yeah.
And part of delivering oxygen to your cells is it's half oxygen, but it's also half carbon dioxide. And they're always in harmony. You inhale oxygen, you exhale carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
So if we just put a bunch of oxygen inside of you, it's actually not that helpful. A lot of that just goes onto the red blood cells, circulates back around, and comes right back out your breath. So to fix that problem, we fill up your red blood cells with oxygen, have you hit 100% saturation of your red blood cells. And that happens in about maybe 2 minutes. And then we flip a switch while you're exercising and switch the air that you're breathing to lower oxygen air. So about 13% or 10,000 feet of elevation roughly. And that you have immediate spike in CO2. And the CO2 is like the key that unlocks the oxygen from the red blood cells. We're kind of tricking your red blood cells into releasing their oxygen with the artificially high CO2.
I see.
And as soon as we have that reaction in the body and we see your oxygen level start to fall, we immediately put you back on pure oxygen and we repeat the cycle over again. So we're kind of, with the flip of a switch, we're manipulating the holding and releasing of oxygen from your red blood cells. And we have it built into a really smart system that can increase your cellular oxygenation by about 3x over what your baseline would be from one training session.
Wow.
And it only takes 15 minutes.
How much is a unit?
Between $4,000 to $5,000, depending on the system that you purchase. And
Okay.
once you have it, though, there's really no yearly costs. You just have it, and you can be for 10 years, and you can
It's plug and play, basically.
plug and play. You can work with your whole family with it,
And there's a software that is doing the amplitude thing, yeah?
well, that's done through a pulse oximetry system that's measuring that, but the switching is still manual at the moment.
Okay.
So the switching
is that
from
what
high
you,
oxygen to low is manual.
So is that what you train? Is that what I had to learn myself in order to operate the switch?
Yeah, that's basically what I train people is how to operate the switch. And maybe in the future we'll be able to make a program that automates it, but it would be really, really challenging.
I mean, you could connect it to some sort of oxygen reader.
It is, but it's a little bit of an art and a science at the same time because everyone's body is so different.
Okay, of course.
And how they're reacting is different. There's a lot of variables. So it'd be really hard to teach a computer to do it. It's not impossible, but I think we're probably still another maybe 3-4 years away from getting to make an automated system. And I think even at that point, I don't think it would be able to replace a trainer, you know, reading all the cues of a person working with their bodies.
Okay.
And even in some of the later protocols, like the more advanced protocols, we stop using the oxygen meter. We start going by more how people are feeling because it's a lot better than some arbitrary number that we wrote in this spreadsheet that you should follow. So
it's also about like body consciousness and like feeling what's going on right in your head. Mainly.
Teaching people how to breathe, making people connect with their bodies. One thing I really love about it is where we are helping people to start, being conscious about their breath. And we have doctors recommending to their patients or, health coaches, all different types of coaches, oxygen and exercise in place of some medications and seeing really amazing results with their health. So We really don't want to be classified as a medical device. We're more of like a wellness tool, exercise tool, but it's extremely helpful for a lot of people dealing with a lot of different things.
Where do you see most effects, or in terms of impact? Like, is it like elderly or younger, or where?
The older, the better, really.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because that's who needs it the most. Kids really don't need extra oxygen unless they're dealing with a really specific condition.
Okay.
So if you're younger and you're an elite level athlete, like for example, Tom Brady, who just was the quarterback of the winning team of the Super Bowl, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We have 5 or 6 different NFL teams. The Arizona Cardinals, a bunch of different teams are using our equipment right now for elite level athletes.
Yeah.
To keep their performance high, decrease inflammation, increase performance. So we are permeating professional sports, but that's really kind of the minority because not everyone is a super high level athlete.
Yeah.
But the people really are the people dealing with health issues as they get older that see the most benefits from it.
Oh, I mean, it's a growing market for sure.
Yeah, it's a growing market and it works. I mean, we're not the best marketers. Like we're not, setting the world on fire with our marketing. We're really just about getting people, making, when people have our equipment, giving them really good experiences and good outcomes. And they just go out and just, tell their doctor, they tell their friends, they tell their neighbors. And it's pretty much the vast majority of our marketing comes in from word of mouth, which is pretty
so you
awesome.
do you have a website that I can just link?
Yeah, it's liveO2.com.
LiveO2.com.
And in Indonesia, it's boostmyo2.com. O2 is an O and 2 for oxygen.
Yeah.
And they can, try it out. They can get a session. The things that I'm most excited about in, the studies that we're doing, and there's different outside organizations that are studying our equipment, is with the brain. So if you know somebody that's had a stroke, they are dealing with cognitive decline or dementia, let's say a TBI or a concussion.
Yeah.
LiveO2 is probably, in my opinion, the best thing you can possibly do, regardless of the amount of money you have or the access to any treatment you have that you can do to improve your brain function after any of those types of incidents or injuries. I've just seen remarkable things from people training on the system. And I've seen also people that have trained, used like a hard shell medical grade hyperbaric chamber and watched the results and progression. And then after they couldn't afford it anymore, they've come to LiveO2 and started training with us and are continuing to see results even faster than they were seeing with the, the gold standard medical standard of a hyperbaric chamber. So it's really cool.
So if I'm not able to afford one of your machines, you have these outlets now that you're.
Well, a lot of doctors have them in their facilities.
Oh, okay, so you sell them to doctors.
Doctors, and then some like biohacking and sports facilities have them as well.
Yeah.
Some like wellness clinics and spas, or some have them, but it's mostly doctors.
Yeah.
Different types of doctors, mostly holistic minded doctors that are looking at the body as a total organism, not in its bits and parts.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can go down, and I think the average price for a session is around $50 a session.
Yeah.
If you're going to go in and get a session, but depending on the condition, it might be a several month journey of going 3 or 4 days a week. So oftentimes the balance is, I might just be more affordable just to buy a system.
Yeah.
Because I can keep it forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been very rewarding to work with different people and their conditions and over the phone, helping them, and through video call every single night. I'm still working nights here in Indonesia, which has been challenging, but it's rewarding when people have amazing outcomes. Or like,
what kind of testimonials do you get?
I mean, the big thing is like, we can't actually talk, like I could talk about it here, but like we can't publish that many testimonials to the website because the FDA in America is really, really has, doesn't let us basically. They'll pull it from the site if we say anything like this.
So that kind of stuff falls under FDA.
Well,
Interesting.
It doesn't fall under FDA, so we can't make medical claims. So like we can't, because we're not FDA approved yet.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it's like, this is a question people are like, so if it's so great, why don't you have FDA approval? It's like, if you really just, take a little bit of time and look into what it takes to get FDA approval, I mean, just the certification process alone is around, probably in total, around $200 million.
Huh? 200 million.
When you add in all of the research and development of the product from the whole entire life cycle, the actual certification itself, just paying for the certifications and going through their testing procedures, is probably around 20 to 50 million.
But I mean that you don't need FDA approval to sell food or sell this thing. You need FDA approval to make certain claims, or is that
to make claims and for insurance to pay for it.
Oh, okay.
That's it. So I mean, I can, people can talk about their experiences all they want, but we have to be very careful about how we discuss the product and things like this because of that. But yeah, it's been pretty amazing. Like I worked with a guy, Craig Smith, in Bali actually when I landed there, and he's a former Harvard professor, and he's a current professor, I believe, at Beijing University, if I remember correctly, and 74, and he was dealing with serious cognitive decline, where he would go to the local store and he would forget if he walked there or drove there and who he came with.
Okay.
So he's really scared.
Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or what is it?
The diagnosis that he got from his doctor was mild cognitive decline.
Okay.
But I think it was on the borderline of being more than mild. Also, his mother died of dementia. So there's a family history of dementia. So he's just scared. And he went to, the leading doctors in the States and met with them and in their white coats with all their prestige. And there's not much we can do for you. There's a couple drugs you might be able to take, but there's not much evidence that it's going to really help. And
so is he one of your clients now?
Yeah, he's one of our clients in Bali. So he's just, he's like, I have the money. I went to the best places in the US and mainland US, and there was really nothing they could do for me. They just told me to go home, basically.
Yeah.
And that started him on a journey of trying to find, he doesn't want to give up on himself. He doesn't want to take a death sentence. He wanted to empower himself. So he found this guy named Dr. Dale Bredesen, he wrote this book called The End of Alzheimer's, and he's one of the leading...
The End of
Alzheimer's.
Oh, Alzheimer's.
Yeah, Alzheimer's disease, which is worse than dementia. It's progressively beyond that, where you go to the old folks' home and your mom can't remember you or where she's even at. Like basically no memory at all.
The end of Alzheimer's.
Only short, brief moments of short-term memory and maybe some super long-term memory. There's different types of Alzheimer's, but it's really bad. I mean, so the leading authority in Alzheimer's is Dr. Dale Bredesen, and Craig went to Bredesen and got a consultation, and he recommends a bunch of different things. He recommends diet modification, a ketogenic diet, and some other types of exercise therapies, breathing techniques. But he had some results with Bredesen, but he found the diet was really hard to maintain because it's completely ketogenic.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then he found us, and he was just really not in good shape. He was having trouble. I gave him a neurocognitive exam, and he was having trouble with the neurocognitive exam. It was, I won't disclose, what happened with it, but it wasn't the best.
Yeah.
And we started him on oxygen training. I was training him 5 days a week. So I was like full blown, 5 days a week, full package. Like, let's just get you back and, get you back as well as we can. And after about 4 months, he was immediately seeing results, but after 4 months, I did an interview with him. I have it on our website, on boostmyo2.com. There's a link to it in an articles page. And he reported, he's like, I'm back on my game. I'm able to work again. Pretty much all of my cognitive decline has been reversed, and I'm able to even be a professor again. I'm able to lecture. I have all these plans, all these things I want to do. And he's just like very, very thankful that his cognitive decline was stopped in his tracks and even reversed in about a 4-month period of using the oxygen, 4 to 5 days a week.
Having said that, you're just reciting him. You're not claiming anything, right?
I'm just reciting what he was saying, from his experience with the system.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so there's some really great stories of people having successes with it, and
this could be something for me because I have trouble remembering certain things, certain names. And but anyway, let's go to the next chapter. And that will be cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
How did you get into that? When did it start, and why? Pure boredom.
Well, I was really skeptical of Bitcoin.
I guess it's connected to your self-sustained sort of lifestyle.
Well, I mean,
off the grid, even though with Bitcoin you rather be on grid, right? So
maybe. I mean, for me, it really I was really skeptical. I had so many people try to shove Bitcoin in my face for years.
Yeah.
And I was just like, not interested. Like, I was like, well, how can this technology make any sense? Something else can just come along that's a better algorithm. And won't that just replace Bitcoin? So I was really dragging my feet. I bought some Bitcoin at like 4,900 after the big crash.
Yeah.
And then I sold it, because I was just trying to trade it. I didn't really get it yet.
Yeah.
But I think like, why does cryptocurrency or Bitcoin exist in the first place? What is it solving in the world? And how big is that problem? And is it a good solution to that problem? And for me, the problem is the printing of fiat currencies through central banking policy.
What do you think is going to happen? Do you think, will there be an equilibrium between fiat and crypto, or will fiat just go away?
I think there's going to be an equilibrium between both in the long run.
There will be some sort of yin-yang thing, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
You're not going to get rid of the dollar completely. Maybe some like Bitcoin maximalists.
Because if you get rid of a dollar, how much is Bitcoin worth if you get rid of a dollar, right?
Well, what may happen, I mean, you never know, but people might start pricing things in Bitcoin and not the dollar in the future. And that
or
could
Satoshis, I guess.
And in Satoshis, which is the smallest.
How many Satoshis is $1 right now?
Oh, I don't know. It changes. I don't know, but a Satoshi is 1/1,000,000th of $1. The price of a Bitcoin right now is around 59,000, I think. As of today. So the dollar price changes, Bitcoin price changes, and so I don't know what it is, but something.
Okay.
Do the math on
I can put that into the like an overlay.
But I think it's answering that bigger question that like the central banks just keep printing money.
Yeah.
And what happens if you look historically at the US dollar is you lose purchasing power through inflation.
Yeah.
And I personally don't believe that the CPI, which is what the mainstream media reports as the inflation numbers, is the real inflation. Mm-hmm. I think if you look at the price of equities or the price of housing or things that people actually want to store value in, all of those things are rising dramatically. Like beachside real estate is up like 30% all over the place. Like equities are up, 15+%. So the CPI shows maybe like a 2% increase in inflation, but I don't really believe it's a self-selecting kind of basket. So I really believe that the printing of money is going to start catching up with the United States, and they're devaluing. If you're holding cash, it's losing value basically. So if you have to think about, if I have a bunch of cash and I want to preserve my value, or say, man, you have a child, if you want to pass on that money, say you had $1 million and you want to pass it on to your kid, how do you do it to where it doesn't so it doesn't melt away, where it doesn't get taxed away or inflated away? You want to store a value. So maybe people might say, for a store of value, I'll buy gold. I'll buy a gold bar. But gold is also inflating. Every year they mine more gold. They mine maybe 2% of the total amount of gold is mined in addition every year and added. So it's 2% inflation. And if the price of gold dramatically rose, there'd be a lot more people mining for gold because they can make more money by mining it. So it's like, has this built-in 2% inflation rate per year. And then there's a lot of manipulation around gold. Where, you don't really know how much gold is in that vault, and there's a lot of stuff about that.
There was an incident a couple of years back when the German bank. You heard the story,
Please remind me though.
Oh, it was insane. It went into the news like all the way to the top, where the government went to the US and said, "Hey, by the way, where's our gold?" And of course, the US government sold the same gold multiple times over, right? So who knows how much gold there really is in the vaults?
Exactly.
It's scary, actually, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with Bitcoin, you know exactly who has what.
Yeah, and if you want to take receipt of your gold, say, I don't trust them, I want to actually physically take it.
Yeah.
There's a fee that you pay to ship the gold to you, plus the risk, and then you have the risk of storing the gold yourself.
Yeah.
And if you trust somebody else to store their gold in their bank or their vault, maybe through an ETF or something like that, they charge you management fees on that every year. So you're paying 2% inflation plus your maybe 3% management fee.
Yeah.
Plus you actually can't physically use it it's not liquid. So there's a lot of issues with what's considered to be the gold standard as gold of a store of value has a lot of problems that which I believe Bitcoin solves pretty much all of those problems really eloquently.
Yeah.
and at least as a store of value, I believe it's already started to replace gold.
Yeah.
And I believe over the next few years it will.
What do you think about Ethereum? Do you think will that at some point be dominating? Because it has first it'll turn into proof of stake soon, and then you have functionality or a certain computing power.
Yeah.
Which you don't have for Bitcoin. Because I'm like, the reason why I'm asking this is because I want to buy Ethereum. I want to buy a few, and I expect it to go to where Bitcoin is right now.
Yeah.
Do you think it could happen?
You know, anything's possible.
Could also go the other way around.
Could also go the other way around. I mean, Ethereum has a couple things that made me lose trust in Ethereum.
Oh, okay.
Like fundamental, deep things, like
systemic issues.
Well, Ethereum is ran by the Ethereum Foundation, and
whereas in Bitcoin there's no foundation. The code is the foundation, I guess, right? The miners.
No, I mean Bitcoin has a consensus of all of the coders and miners.
Yeah.
And they have to basically come to a decentralized consensus about any type of changes that they make to the algorithm and the structure of the Bitcoin program.
Yeah.
And they are making changes. They've made changes. They added SegWit, and now they're going to do Taproot. And there's going to be many more changes in the future as the algorithm and the system adapts to real world situations, as technology advances, things like this. But it's happening in a very decentralized way. There's no central authority over it, and it's extremely diligent how it's done. The whole implementation of Bitcoin is really like a beautiful coincidence of all these things kind of lining up and the stars aligning and it happening. It wasn't premeditated with some, hedge fund, Silicon Valley hedge fund with some CEO and millions of dollars in a marketing campaign to try to, pre-mine a bunch of coins for some entrenched, people that start at the beginning, and all these there's all these issues with it. And also, like with Ethereum, they've rolled back the code before. Vitalik was trying to say that the code is the law, and we're going to, just whatever happens in the code it's an immutable ledger is one of the selling points of
but then exactly that happened.
Exactly that happened because probably some people with a lot of leverage within the Ethereum community lost money in the DAO attack.
Yeah.
So really all you're dealing with is a centralized power that has control over a system that in the past has literally rolled back the system and changed the code to benefit themselves. So it's like, just based upon that alone, I have trouble with it. Plus there's a lot of other like technical issues, like they're going to a proof of stake model.
Do you think that's bad? I mean, it saves a lot of energy, right?
It saves energy, but it makes it a lot easier for people to control the system.
Okay.
And it leads towards centralization because all I need to do is have a lot of money, transfer my money with an electronic transfer to that, to stake it within Ethereum, and automatically I can own all of Ethereum. Where with, or I can be, the majority miner, do a 51% attack, which has its own issues. But with Bitcoin, you actually have to spend the money and the time to buy all the miners and set up all the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Which makes it more secure and less efficient, but definitely a more secure system from somebody just buying a bunch of doing a bunch of proof of stake and controlling it.
Yeah, I have a manager based in Bali, Fabian, Swiss guy, and he's my server dude. And just this morning, I spent all morning to kind of like make sure that the new hard drive for the Lightning Network is going to fit into the server, because the server is not the newest. It does not eat more than 2 terabytes. So I had to kind of like work around that. So speaking of which, Lightning Network, which sits on top of Bitcoin, which is kind of like an off-chain system. What do you think is happening there? I mean, is that something you can't really invest into it, right? It's not really something that allows you to grow with it, or does it?
You can invest in it by running your own server. Well, let's just like frame it up for everyone a little bit more. So like with Bitcoin, one of the things you asked about Ethereum and Bitcoin, if you think Bitcoin and Ethereum will, I think they're trying to solve different problems in the world. So I think they're going to totally coexist. And the price of Ethereum may rise, but I don't think it's going to be in any type of competition necessarily with Bitcoin. And, you know, with Bitcoin, there's only going to be 21 million coins ever minted.
Which and how many are lost already?
Quite a bit. I think
quite a bit.
Maybe I don't know exactly, maybe like a third. Quite a bit of coins. I don't think a third is lost, but I know a significant portion of the coins are either lost or they have not moved.
Yeah.
Pretty much ever. People are just taking it and putting it in cold storage.
Yeah.
So there's very little float available, you know, in Bitcoin. There's like everyone's just holding on to it, which is pushing the price higher and higher.
Yeah.
And I think it's just starting, but just it's beautiful that there's something that you can know with certainty how much of it is, how much Bitcoin there is, and how many transactions have taken place, and know every transaction has happened in the past, and really, without having to trust any third parties, know that that's the case.
Yeah.
Which doesn't exist in almost anything else in the entire world.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your money, having that certainty that there's only going to be so many ever made, when we live in a world where inflation is they're just constantly printing money as these systems start to maybe collapse a little bit under their own weight, it's really refreshing, and it really, I believe, is going to be a beautiful store of value in the long run compared to any other alternatives that we have available. Ethereum doesn't have any cap on the amount of Ethereum that can ever be minted or created. But their use case is more for distributed computing and smart contracts versus a store of value.
Yeah.
So I think they're just totally different.
Yeah.
But one problem with Bitcoin is the transaction costs are quite high.
Yes.
So
because of mining.
Yeah, because every time that you make a transaction in Bitcoin, it has to be printed to the ledger and verified by this network of global supercomputers to verify that it's not double spent transactions. So
that kind of is an irony in itself, right? I mean, we discovered the system, which is kind of corruption free. It's incorruptible, but there's a price, and the price is energy.
Yeah, the price of energy.
Yeah.
And so that's a big debate that people have about Bitcoin, is it uses a lot of energy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so every time that you do that transaction, I think the average transaction cost historically has been somewhere around $4, but right now it can be as high as maybe $14.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of what I pay for an international transfer from the UK to Indonesia ish.
And it's kind of funny how it lines up with that a little bit.
Yeah, right.
You know? Yeah, so it kind of finds this natural levels in the price and the demand of energy and for the transferring of the money.
So that money, that tiny little bit difference is going to the miners, right?
The miners.
Yeah.
Okay. It's going to the miners as fees. And
so miners make money on two sides. Either they kind of win the coin or a part of the coin because they're in the pool, right?
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, they get these fees, these recurring fees.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's like debate about what happens when all 21 million coins are minted.
Yeah. What will happen?
And then they're not going to get the block reward anymore. And now they're just going to get fees. But we believe that at that point that the price of the Bitcoin, by the time it hits 21 million, will be so high that, and there's going to be so much transactions through the network that will not be an issue when the time comes. We'll see what happens when the time comes. But one of the solutions to this issue, I mean, so kind of Bitcoin right now works kind of like FedWire in the US. So it's a settlement layer, the primary settlement layer for big transactions.
Yeah.
But if you tried to buy your local cup of coffee with the FedWire, you would pay a lot of fees and it would be that kind of a little bit slow.
Yeah.
And there's some issues with it. So right now there's development with the Lightning Network, which you're talking about starting the server with, which is a way to transact Bitcoin transactions through Tor, not on the blockchain, through basically a private ledger between two parties in a payment channel. And we can fund our channels and exchange value between each other at the speed of light and as many times as we want for just the cost of sending the electricity, which is basically the cost of an email right now. Like,
what does Tor actually provide in that sort of context?
I mean, that's the
safety,
the internet protocol layer that the transactions are taking place through.
Yeah.
So it's not the regular internet that that the transaction is traveling through. And it adds some anonymity to the transactions. Okay. So it's it tore
But
basically
protection from hacking attacks as well, or not so much?
Protection from hacking.
Because that would be my concern, right? I mean, if this, I mean, Lightning Network is some sort of IOU sort of system, right? And then what if a hacker comes in and suddenly says, I owe you a lot more, and then somehow he's able to kind of siphon off something.
There's been some, in develop. Lightning Network has only really started. It's been development for a while, but it only has been able to be truly implemented since 2019. So it's pretty much brand new.
Yeah.
And it's building a whole entire other layer to the layers of the traditional payment system. It's building a whole entire another layer.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of development happening with it right now. And there has been published papers by, MIT, different universities, different research firms showing vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And showing these bugs and showing, potentially places where people can hack the system. But as more of those come out, then the developers put more energy into finding those holes and patching them,
of course.
and thinking through them. But there's a lot of creativity that still has to happen with it.
Yeah.
But a lot of help with it is that you have to fund your channel in order to send transactions with your own money.
Yeah.
So for someone to, it basically is like a mini escrow, which is fairly safe because you risk losing whatever you put up, and you can only transact the amount of money that you're willing to put up in the first place, which hurts the incentives of trying to hack it because you could potentially lose whatever you funded with inside of your own channel.
So in a sense, Lightning is like cash, because you go to the ATM, you load up your wallet, your Lightning wallet, and then you have that cash to kind of spend within the Lightning Network.
Yeah.
And then essentially the cash goes back into the system, which basically means it's written into a block.
Yeah. And whenever you take the money out of the Lightning Network, it goes printed to the blockchain.
Yeah.
And at that point, you would pay an on-chain fee. But, most ideally, you'd want to keep a certain amount of money in your Lightning wallet and just transfer it back around.
Yeah.
And you would fix the time issue between transactions, and the fees would be dramatically lower. All of this is in practice now. We have wallets. We've done transactions with Lightning back and forth. And this also could potentially help with the energy problem of Bitcoin.
Yeah, of course.
Because every time that something is printed to the blockchain, they have to run this massive energy consuming, hashing to make sure that coin hasn't been double spent. And that's where the energy consumes every time you print to the blockchain. Well, if we have the Lightning Network, we can transact 1,000 times between us and never have to print to the blockchain. It's like sending emails back and forth or
Does
text
that mean
messages.
Miners will be obsolete in future? Or most of them?
Well, I don't think they will be, because as people come onto the network and more transactions need to be processed, I think that it's still going to be growing.
Yes.
But another thing too is it interesting with miners. It's the fees are directly related with the cost of electricity.
Yeah.
And on the broader scale, like electricity costs are falling globally, and they have been, and they will continue as more, solar, wind, battery storage comes online.
Yeah.
The overall cost of energy should continue to fall. And maybe in a future, we can, a really optimistic future, we might hit a place where we hit like a zero marginal cost of energy, where energy becomes, so abundant and free that it's near free. Which in that sense,
But that would also mean I have enough energy to hack it.
You would have to buy all of the miners and set up all the infrastructure and have the money to buy all the miners, which is different than, because that's a proof of work. So you have to spend, each one of those ASIC miners is around $4,000.
Yeah.
And you need warehouses and warehouses and warehouses full of them with cooling systems and IT departments and infrastructures and buildings and cooling systems.
Since you're such a DIY guy, why did you not build your own mining rig?
I have in the past, but the problem is that it's economically challenging because of the cost of power.
You weren't at a place with like cheap energy.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really make a lot of sense for me to mine Bitcoin.
But isn't Hawaii a place of cheap energy?
Well, I was off grid, remember?
Oh yeah, of course.
But I would have to scale up my solar array so big and have my battery backups, and then it would only work. It just economically, I don't think it'd make a lot of sense for me to mine coin. Yeah. I did do like a breakdown even in Bali. I think it would take you about a year to break even on one miner.
Yeah.
So it's a big commitment. And then what happens if the mining technology changes? Because they used to mine on GPUs, and then they started mining on ASICs, and there was a couple shades of gray in between. And you spent the money for all of this hardware, and then they come out with a newer mining technology, and all your old one is not anywhere near as good as the new one, and then you're like out of. It's like it's kind of a tough business to be a crypto miner, but you'll see crypto miners. It appears that they congregate around free or cheap or excess energy. So that's why a lot of them are in China, maybe at a big dam project where they have enough energy to operate energy for the whole community, but they have excess energy and they siphon that off to run Bitcoin miners. So a lot of the energy that goes into Bitcoin, just because of the economics, is low cost, and a lot of low cost energy ends up being abundant green energy that's excessive.
So you'd say if all miners would stop operating, it would have no impact on CO2 output in the world.
What was that?
CO2 output in the world, it would have no impact, right?
If all miners stop, obviously, if they all stop mining tomorrow, there would be a decrease in energy that's being used. It's hard to say how much of the energy, even green energy, has a carbon emission output. I mean, there's a lot of, the cost to make a solar panel is quite intense, because you have to melt the sand and make the electrodes, and same with batteries, you got to mine all the equipment. Same with wind, you got to build the turbines and turbines.
Well, you could reroute that energy, and then you could turn off a few coal power plants, I guess.
I mean, it costs energy to have a true system that you can verify and not have to trust anyone to exchange the whole entire on a scalable level of a global currency. It's going to take some energy to do it, but a lot of that energy should be green energy in the end.
Cool.
And and then you think too, like
fiat also has a cost, right? Like you have 7 fleets of battleships cruising around the world, making sure that everyone eats the dollar.
Exactly. So there's a cost to that as well. And so
cool. Well, Robert, it was great having you here on my podcast. We're definitely going to do another one in future, I guess. And we stay in touch, of course. I suppose. I will come to Bali at some point. Maybe I'll bring my equipment and we talk more. But because of time constraints, we have to kind of like wrap it up.
Sounds good. But, it's a lot of fun.
Thank you very much thanks for coming. And see you next time, maybe.
Sounds good, brother.
Awesome.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.